We've all sat through it, the mandatory corporate brainstorm. It usually features a blank whiteboard, a room full of crossed arms, and an agonizing silence that eventually devolves into the highest paid person in the room suggesting the safest possible idea. The problem with these meetings is how they view innovation. They treat creativity like a spontaneous lightning strike, a lucky accident that happens if you stare at a problem long enough. But waiting for a spark of inspiration is a terrible business strategy. High-performing creative teams replace the hope of a miracle with a rigorous idea strategy system. They use specific tactics designed to bypass the rigid, conscious barriers that typically keep our thinking safe and predictable. Getting to those hidden ideas requires someone to actively steer the process. It requires a facilitator operating in boss mode, a leader who actively engineers the creative process rather than passively taking notes on a whiteboard. Effective brainstorming depends on a specific structural environment. When you provide the right psychological cues, even a standard team can consistently surface insights that look like strokes of luck to outsiders. The foundation of a great session gets laid long before anyone sits down. A pro facilitator curates the guest list to guarantee cognitive diversity. If you only invite people with the exact same background and expertise, you are hardwiring an echo chamber into the calendar invite. Once that diverse group is in the room, the facilitator has to do something completely counterintuitive: ignore the core problem. Before anyone attempts to solve a business challenge, the absolute priority is establishing a baseline of psychological safety. A highly effective way to do this is with an exercise like Dream Sketch or Draw Your Job. You put 3 minutes on the clock and ask them to draw a recent dream or visually encapsulate their daily responsibilities. These exercises crank up what you might call the room's Weird Al knitter. By forcing adults to share amateur stick figure sketches, you introduce a controlled dose of vulnerability and empathy. It signals to the brain that this is a space where it is safe to share absurd or unpolished concepts. To further manage this environment, the facilitator can act as a workshop DJ. By introducing carefully selected music, they can physically shift the mood and mental state of the room before the real work begins. By deliberately manufacturing this empathy and lowering everyone's social defenses up front, the facilitator effectively eliminates the fear of judgment, the single biggest factor that kills corporate brainstorms before a single idea is spoken. With the room primed, the group enters the diverge phase. The objective here is chaotic volume. Participants generate as many unconventional directions as possible under a strict ban on evaluation or critique. To keep things moving, the facilitator has to model the exact behavior they want to see. By volunteering a genuinely bizarre, half-formed idea right out of the gate, the leader gives the rest of the team explicit permission to get weird. When the momentum dips, you deploy a tactic like "What would X do?" By asking the team to imagine how Abraham Lincoln, Kermit the Frog, or Amelia Earhart might solve the business problem, you force the group to view the challenge through a completely foreign lens. To push those strange concepts even further, you borrow a rule from improv theater: yes and. Instead of shooting down a weird idea, the team is forced to accept it as reality and add their own twist, stretching absurd premises into unexpectedly viable territories. This dive into the absurd resets the team's creative baseline. You have to intentionally cross the line of common sense to discover exactly where the new boundaries of your challenge actually lie. But generating a massive, chaotic pile of sticky notes isn't the finish line. To turn wild concepts into a strategy, the facilitator has to shift the room into the final phase and introduce structured friction. Tactics like debate club or provocat prompts apply this friction perfectly. By deliberately assigning team members to argue opposing sides, you subject the idea to a rigorous stress test that quickly exposes any weak links. Once an idea survives debate, organize it using the priority framework, stripping away noise into a hierarchy. It has 4 layers: essence, the core in 4 words; execution, the actual format; elevation, compelling extras; and eventually, the long-term vision. Applying this rigorous refinement is the crucial final step. It transforms a chaotic, half-baked brainstorm into a set of highly structured innovations that are genuinely ready for real-world testing. Most meetings end with a vague sense of enthusiasm and no clear next steps. A process-driven session ends with tangible, categorized data, a vault of stress-tested opportunities that have been ranked and prioritized by the team. It turns out that rigorous procedural structure and wild creative playfulness are not opposites. They actually require each other. Without playfulness, the process is sterile. Without structure, the playfulness is useless. The facilitator serves as the architect of the playground. They design the structural boundaries and emotional safety net that allow the team to discover the breakthrough ideas for themselves. Stop waiting for a spark of genius to strike your team. Prep the room, prime the mind, diverge wildly, and debate fiercely. When you build a better system for thinking, the ideas follow.